Hey everybody, welcome back to this first Sunday of Lent. This is Summit. My name is Mark. You know, the Lenten season is tricky, right? Because it's important. The church tells us every single year, she reminds us every single year, this season is really important. A time to press pause, to consider our lives, to look at how well we're doing, how not well we're doing in different places, to be able to reflect, to pray more, to give alms, to serve, to tithe, to sacrifice, right? Just to unite ourselves more closely to the God who loves us and the God who died for us. But this first week, we have readings we've heard many times before. Two very famous stories in the first reading and in the gospel. And oftentimes what happens is if you've heard these readings a bunch of times or you know the gist of the story, we can kind of tune out a little bit. But that's the challenge in Lent. It's not to lean back, it's to lean in. To lean into Lent, to lean into the Lord. Don't pull back, lean in. That's what the church is encouraging and inviting us to this week. In this first reading, you've heard this before. It comes from Genesis chapter 2, Genesis chapter 3. This is the fall of Adam and Eve. Now, we're reminded that, that God, he puts them in the garden. We see him there. He's breathing life into Adam, right? He's forming Eve. He knows them intimately. I mean, he has his hands, he gets his hands dirty. Like he knows them, he forms them, he creates them, he loves them, he wants to be in a relationship with them. And then here comes the serpent. And actually in Hebrew, the word really isn't like serpent like a snake, it's more like a dragon. It's a very menacing, very scary creature in the Hebrew. So sometimes when we hear the story, we kind of reduce it to like a little garter snake. That's not what it was. At any rate, in the story, we have the serpent who tells the first lie. And he basically is telling them, you can't trust God. Oh, who says you can't eat the fruit? You can eat the fruit. He's trying to withhold something from you. It's the first lie, but it's the lie that still exists today. Can we trust God? Can I trust God? If suffering is in front of me, or potential suffering, if temptation is in front of me, if darkness is in front of me, if sin, which is very attractive and fun, is in front of me, can I trust God? Yes. Yes, that's the reminder of Lent, is that yes, you can trust God. You have a God who loves you so much that he'd rather die than risk spending eternity without you. But when we hear these readings, again, sometimes we just go, oh, okay, God, I can't trust God. He knows you intimately. The same way he knew Adam and Eve intimately, formed them and created them, he formed and created you in your mother's womb. He knows you intimately. He knows where your sinful inclinations are, where my sinful inclinations are, where our temptations are. But he also knows that if we rely on him and lean into his grace, if we trust him, that he's going to be there with us. He's not going to abandon us. We'll be strong enough to overcome any temptation. And that's what we see modeled by God, by Jesus, in the desert in the gospel. Notice this. Jesus has been out in the desert fasting for 40 days. Now, it's when he's physically at his weakest, that's when the devil comes and tempts him and attacks. And it's really no different with us still today. It's when we're at our weakest, when we're bored, when we're angry, when we're tired, when we're hungry, when we're stressed, when we're physically compromised. That's oftentimes when we get attacked, when we get tempted. That's when evil comes looking for us. And that's sort of the challenge. We see what Jesus does. And notice that Jesus, when he responds to the devil, he responds using scripture each and every time. That's a great reminder. That's one of the reasons it's so important that we get into the readings every single week for Mass, like with videos like this, with things like Summit. That's why it's so important that we know the Lord through his word and have a relationship with him so that when evil does come, we're reminded of what? That we have a God we can trust. We have a God who's always present. That's what scripture reminds us of. We can trust God. God is always with us, walking with us. He's there for us, especially in our times and moments of need. Over the course of the next 7 weeks, we're going to have a journey into the spiritual desert, that we call Lent. The challenge really is going to be, are you willing to lean in to the Lord? Lean into Lent, to face those temptations, to face those evils, to face those inclinations, to face those areas of your life, my life, where we need to do better, where we need to serve, we need to sacrifice, we need to pray, we need to give. This is a great opportunity to go deeper. Go there.